The biggest area I needed to grow in was just the emotional need for affirmation that I carried from my youth. I wasn't caring for the people I was leading. I was using them. When I'm leading from joy, I'm much less manipulative. A safe leader is always doing his work, right? If you think you've arrived, you're not a safe leader anymore.
Welcome to the Crucible Project podcast. The Crucible Project is a nonprofit organization committed to creating a world of men and women who live with integrity, grace, and courage, helping them to fulfill their God-given purpose. This podcast will discuss important and sometimes difficult topics while delivering practical life applications with men and women who are currently practicing this work. We are igniting Christ-like change in men and women through experiences of radical honesty and grace.
Hello and welcome to the Crucible Project podcast. My name is Tim Rush, and today we're talking about leadership with Bob Locascio. Locascio has been connected to the Crucible Project for well over 20 years. Quite a journey when Bob walks into the room and are ready to follow him. Like, he is big in our world. So Bob, thank you for joining us today. Anything else that we should say to introduce Bob Locascio?
No, happy to be here. Looking forward to talking about leadership.
Thank you. My journey with Bob goes back to, I think, my initial weekend. I believe you're in the pictures. Definitely remember my first staffing experience. You were leading. You brought a serious and a deepness with an aspect of joy. And men were struggling at certain points. I remember you requiring a man who was really sitting in a lot of shame. You required him to tell us a joke, and it brought the room to laughter. And you helped him see, man, you're really important here, and your voice matters. I remember just sitting there thinking, that's brilliant.
Thanks.
Another highlight of Bob Locascio is his very first trip to Mexico. He got a tattoo on his very first trip.
My doctor had a conniption when I told her.
Yeah, so he's a daring adventurer, I will say that. I do also want to mention that Bob has led Crucible retreats in 4 different countries, 3 different continents around the globe. He's seen firsthand that this isn't, and how do I say this? It's not a pop psychology idea. This affects men to the core of who they are.
Been amazed, even with all the cultural differences that there are between the U.S. and Mexico and Kenya, Australia, how universal the woundedness of men is. I mean, every man's wound is individual on his, and yet the woundedness, it just goes across cultures.
So let's think back on your leadership journey, Bob. When was it that you turned around and realized people were following you?
Yeah, it was early in my career post-college. I was an electrical engineer, started with a big tech company. And within, I'd say, about 4 years of joining as a bench engineer and working on engineering projects, they moved me into the lowest level of leadership of engineers, called a group leader. So I was now leading a group of engineers working on projects and not doing the engineers. The guys jokingly came in my office one day and they said, we're confiscating your soldering iron. And so engineers seem to like working for me and want to work for me.
My hat is off to you, because engineers, they're a unique set.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can speak their language, that says something about you understanding culture. So from the beginning of your leadership journey, what was it that you feel confident you were doing well?
You know, I felt like I was able to see individuals and their talents, their skills, their shortcomings, and manage that, coordinate that to get people in the right assignments to get projects done.
Yeah, so you could read the individual.
Right.
So when you look back, was there a blind spot in your leadership? Was there something that was missing?
Yeah, to me, probably the biggest area I needed to grow in was just the emotional need for affirmation that I carried from my youth, from my upbringing, and then looking for that from the people I was leading. Which is not an emotionally healthy relationship with the people you're leading. So while the projects were succeeding, in a way I was preying on the people and trying and doing it to get affirmation.
So preying on is a big word. What
it is.
What did that actually look like?
Yeah, for me, in this case, I use it in a general sense to mean getting something from the other person that they don't realize they're giving you, right?
Yeah.
And so, ways of seeking affirmation, verbal, without being direct about it. And so in that sense, taking from them without them knowing.
I have to think that we as leaders do that a lot more than we realize, right?
I was totally unconscious of it at the time till I got into this work.
Yes. So what came up for you that you realized that you were doing it, and two, that it was unhealthy?
Well, as I got into this work and started understanding my woundedness and this unmet need for affirmation, I started realizing I had lots of great brothers that walked alongside me and helped me to see how I was using a manipulation to try to get that from people, right? So not just leading well, but also doing this manipulation to try to get that affirmation. And in that, often being controlling, not leading from joy, leading from fear of not, that I wasn't going to get affirmed. And so doing that controlling, manipulative thing.
So what bad things happen when we're manipulating like that, when we're getting something from people that they don't know that they're giving us?
Well, the way I thought about it, and now looking back, how I think about it is I was treating people like objects, almost like chess pieces, right? I'm going to move this piece here, move this piece here, move this piece here in order for the project to succeed and for me to get affirmation, right? So I wasn't caring for the people I was leading. I was using them.
So do you think, looking back, my guess is people couldn't put a finger on it. Was it affecting the groups and the teams that you were leading if it was a subtle form of manipulation that was happening?
Certainly it came out when I started leading in Crucible, because the people are all more emotionally aware when you're leading a staff on a retreat, for example. In the workplace, not so much. People are less emotionally aware just in general. So I didn't get a lot of negative kind of pushback there. When I started with Crucible, I got called out a lot on being too controlling.
So I want to come back to that about being called out as a leader. And it came up for you. How did you deal with it? Like, how did you make steps to improve?
Well, so one obviously is awareness of why I was doing it, and then working to find other ways to fill that need for myself so I didn't bring that into retreat leading. So and there are a couple of different things I did. One main practice that I still do today, even after leading 100 plus retreats, is I do some visualizations before a retreat with imagining me talking to my own little boy, and I encourage him and fill him up emotionally. And I tell him that he is not leading the retreat. He can just come hang out, and the adult me is leading the retreat. And that way he doesn't come online during the retreat and do that manipulation. So that's a big part of it. The other part is really a shift to intentionally try to lead from a place of joy. When I'm leading from joy, I'm much less manipulative. I don't hold things as tightly as when I lead from fear. So those are probably the two big shifts, some self-care going in, and then this posture of trying to lead from joy and consciously letting go.
When you talk about having that conversation, when you meditate and you have a conversation with your little boy, you're referring to the small part of you, right?
Yeah, it's just a way to picture that part of me that was wounded in my childhood, that did not get the affirmation that every child needs from their parents. My parents just weren't affectionate that way. And so I grew up with that deficit. So I just pictured that wounded part of me as still that 7, 8-year-old boy. And I just imagine myself going back in time and having that conversation with him.
Well, imagine there's a leader listening to this that never pondered at doing something to receive affirmation from the people they're leading, that there was anything sideways about that. Imagine their go-to is eating affirmation is bad. What would you say to them about that part of them that needs to be told they're good?
Yeah, as you described that brings up a lot of sadness for me, because I've seen a lot of people like that, worked with them on retreats and groups and coaching. And if I was working with them, the invitation I would have for them is, do you see that you're now treating yourself the way, two, is getting that affirmation from God as well through whatever daily practices you might have, journaling, praying, whatever it is. So that's part of it too. And I can't quote you a verse on this, but my belief is that our ability to receive that kind of grace and affirmation from God is dependent on our ability to give it to ourselves, not theologically, right? but emotionally, right? I don't really like, I could theologically say, yeah, I know God loves me. I know he forgives me. But if I don't really love and forgive and affirm myself, that I'm not really going to let that in from God.
If you can't accept it from yourself, even if you know the right words and the right verses to say,
Yeah.
it makes
Yeah.
sense that becomes a block between
Right.
you and
It's
God as well.
your faith is just a head thing then and not a heart thing.
Now, this isn't a theological discussion, but it does seem like Bible and Jesus make it clear, love God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength. So there are parts of us that he separates out, and one of those is the mind. We're to love God with all of our mind, but there are other parts of us too
Sure.
that it
Sure.
makes sense that they need to be brought into the equation.
Yep. The other sad part of that whole being in that dynamic is if you're not really affirming and accepting yourself, even though you might be seeking it from others, when you get it, you don't really let it in either.
Yeah.
So that's why you always are seeking more and more. It feels like it's never enough because it's not really landing for you.
Right. And so the manipulation that you're doing doesn't scratch that itch.
Right. And so you do more. Yeah.
And so say more about leading with joy. How do you make that step?
Well, so leading from joy for me is one, letting go of the results. Not that I don't care about the results, but just the people I'm leading, lifting them up, focusing on them succeeding. One of the shifts I had to learn early on is before Crucible, even when I was leading in the tech world, is when you're a manager, you need to get your sense of accomplishment from the accomplishments of the team, not from yourself, right? And so bringing that into leading a retreat, seeing some guy lead an exercise for the first time and doing well and enjoying seeing other people shine. And that's, in a lot of ways, that's a choice.
So how do you lead yourself or coach yourself to get back to that place when things aren't turning out in real time the way that you wanted them to turn out?
Yeah. And that's tricky. Cause sometimes I'll shift in to task mode, I would call it. And then when I'm in task mode, it's fear-based and people and things are the same to me. And so, just over time, recognizing that quickly and just making that conscious shift to stop and see the people, see where they're at. I will look right past the people when I'm in that task mode.
I've not heard the put in those words before, and that's fascinating because the word tool comes to mind. That I feel that in my body, like that sense of task and the people are the same.
Yeah.
Be looked at the same way.
Right. People are just another thing, right? To put on a weekend, we need a bunch of supplies, and the staff are just one of the supplies that I use to do the weekend. That's unhealthy mode of leadership.
So for you to remind yourself, people aren't tools, they're people.
Right.
That brings you back into a place of joy.
And focusing on each individual thriving, and then just trusting God, trusting the process, that if every staff member thrives, the weekend's going to be a great experience for the participants. And that's been proven over and over again.
So mentioned at the very beginning about feedback. That's been part of the journey is receiving feedback.
Sure.
Have you felt a change pre-Crucible weekend when you receive feedback? Have you learned something new through your work with Crucible, how to receive that and how to handle it? Because it's not always constructive.
It's not always constructive. When you're in a place of leadership, people will project onto you, will see you as leaders from their past that have hurt them. And they will see whatever negative traits were in those leaders, they will see those in you. Maybe to some extent it's true. Often it's not true at all. And so part of it is working through that relationally with those people that are bringing that, accepting whatever is actually true about you. And so to me, part of the genius of Crucible Project and why I've stayed with it for so many years is receiving feedback when you're in relationship with the person, for me, is just a far safer experience than, feedback from a boss at work that's a form. And I mean, that's still tough. But when there are men that I serve with, that I do life with, that I know love me, and they challenge me, I don't experience that as damaging the relationship, right? Or that's not instead of the relationship, that's within the relationship. I mean, I have a group that I'm still part of where I do my work and was challenged in the last group a couple weeks ago. And the challenge was right on, but it came from a man I know loves me that I do life with. And so to me, that's a big difference, is feedback from people you're in a relationship with. Now, for feedback for others, then it's really a filtering process. What of this is true? What can I learn from this? What of this do I just need to discard as untrue? And yeah, and I'm in control of that.
So part of your role with Crucible is pouring into future leaders.
Mm-hmm.
By future, it usually means they've got some leadership that they're given authority over. A lot of times it's training wheels, and then you get to help them take the training wheels off. How do you help them walk into these moments when people are going to say, "You've messed up," and they have to do the inner work of knowing, or is that a projection? How do you help guys like me step into that?
Well, so one things we do, and I do, and this is a teaching I learned from Greg Houston, founder of Crucible, is the idea of thinking of feedback as someone's tossing you a ball, right? And you're going to catch, and their criticism, they toss it to you. And you catch it, you look at it, and you decide what to do with it. You could discard it all. You could take little bits. So I teach that to leaders that I'm with. I also warn them ahead of time, you're going to get a lot of feedback that doesn't fit. So you need to filter. I also work hard to affirm them and affirm the good stuff that I do see. Crucible has a good feedback model of this 2-part feedback, things I appreciate, and then better ifs, right? And I really like framing the feedback as better ifs, right? So it's not that you're bad, but you could be even better in your leadership if, right? And we also teach growth is a lifelong process, right? You'll never be Jesus this side of heaven. And so you're always growing. So there's always a better if. So maybe that's another piece of teaching for upcoming leaders is you may reach this level of certification, but you're never done growing. We just certified a new retreat leader 2 days ago, and I was one of his mentors. So we gave him like 5 pieces of better if in addition to certifying him. And so that's just the nature of it. And so I think people that can't shift will end up stepping out of Crucible if they felt like, well, if I do this, and this, then I'll arrive. Yeah, you might certify at a certain level, but you haven't arrived yet. And that's actually one of the marks we believe of a safe leader that I will, coach leaders I'm mentoring on is a safe leader is always doing his work, right? If you think you've arrived, you're not a safe leader anymore because you've got some blind spots and you're not even looking for them anymore.
Part of my continuing story is that I'm never qualified enough. Being a missionary and thinking, if I just had this piece of education, then I would know what I'm doing, to learning Spanish and feeling like once I get to this level in school, then I'll speak, and getting to that level and feeling like I still don't understand what's happening. Crucible is the one place that I felt the most safe with where I'm at. That I'm surrounded by people. I'm not alone. And it's understood that I'm always going to have better ifs. That's okay.
One analogy I'll use is the leadership journey is not a race with a finish line. There is no finish line. It's just a lifelong journey, right? And I'll tell people maybe they get discouraged because they look at more senior leaders and see, I say, don't worry so much about where you're at any moment, right? If you're growing, you're good, right? Because there's no finish line. So you can't say, well, I'm halfway there. I'm 3/4 of the way. There's no finish line. So there's no percent there. If you're moving in the right direction, you're golden.
That is so, it can feel defeating to not have a finish line, but man, it is so inspiring to know, then I'm at the right place I need to be.
Right. And the Bible even says, God's not done with us. Someday in heaven, but not yet.
Man, Bob, thank you so much for this conversation. You have been really important to me in my journey since 2012. Anything else that you would like to say to the audience before we close this?
One other facet of leadership that I would want to emphasize is the servant aspect of leadership, the sacrificial aspect of leadership. When you're a leader, especially, and this is true in Crucible and in the marketplace to an extent, but certainly in Crucible, you're not one of the guys anymore or one of the gals. If you're one of our women leaders, people are looking to you for something, right? That leadership energy, keeping that mantle on. And so when you're in a leadership role, give up that being one of the guys, one of the gals kind of thing. And so, there's in the Christian world, There are so many. Go to Amazon and search for Christian leadership books, and you will find thousands, right? There's global conferences. There's magazines on Christian leadership. Where's the Christian servantship conference, right? And so this idea of when I'm a leader, I'm actually serving all the people I'm leading and empowering them and enabling them and helping them to thrive, as I talked about before. And that's when the whole team succeeds. And you're leading, but in a way that's serving. And I think oftentimes immature leaders, let's say, don't get that part.
That reminds me of attending a Christian conference through all my growing up years that produced more and more preachers because they would come and see thousands of people sit at the feet of a preacher. They would go, ooh, I want to do that too. And don't know that it was a successful model because leading isn't about the upfront and glorious part. There's so much sacrifice that goes in to making it healthy.
Yes, agreed.
Well, thank you very much, Bob. I really appreciate this conversation. This is so fun for me. I wanted to do these podcasts because it gives me a chance to talk to and who I know are really good leaders, ask my questions. So thank you. This has been a blessing for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed connecting with you. I just got to get you up here to Wrigley for a Cardinals Cubs game.
And that is my bucket list. Is it safe to wear a Cardinal jersey at Wrigley?
I will try to protect you.
Right.
And I would say, there are some Chicago teams and opponents like the Bulls and the Pistons that there is this. At least from my perspective, there is a respect the Cubs fan have for the Cardinals organization because they're a class organization, unlike, say, the Detroit Pistons in the NBA that are not a class organization.
Right. Yeah, I think I would feel safe with you wearing a Cubs jersey at Busch Stadium. I'd be okay with that. Well, we need to make that happen for sure. Listeners, whether you're a Cubs fan, or a Cardinal fan, I hope you've been encouraged today listening to Bob Locascio. What a blessing. So I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope we get to talk to you again soon.
For more information about our weekends, please go to thecrucibleproject.org. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Rate and review wherever you are listening, and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Also, don't forget to check out myjourney2.com for your free 2-week trial. That's myjourney2.com. Thank you for listening.